afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, The Role of Sleep in Spiritual, Psychological, and Physical Health. My name is Gwen Dorsey, and I am the Graduate Admissions Counselor for the graduate programs in Counseling, Divinity, Worship, and Music here at Caring University. It's my pleasure to introduce our faculty presenter for today's webinar. Kim Jetter is a Caring graduate, a faculty member in the Department of Counseling and Psychology, and currently serves as the director of Oasis Counseling Center. She completed her MS in counseling at Caring University. She is also a licensed professional counselor in Pennsylvania and teaches graduate level courses here at Caring. She also maintains a private counseling practice. In today's webinar, Kim will visit ways to build and maintain a healthy sleep regimen. As we know, sleep plays a critical role in our functioning spiritually, psychologically, and physically.
Sleep, in the 40 minutes that we have, we can only cover so much. So we're going to go through kind of an overview, and but by no means is this exhaustive in any way. So let's begin by looking at some of the references that we see in scripture about sleep. There's 3 that I selected, and there's obviously a lot more, but I chose Psalm 4:8, which says, "In peace I will both lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety." Psalm 127:2 says, "It is vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives to his beloved sleep." And then finally, Matthew 6:34, "Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has trouble of its own." And each of these verses of scripture kind of give us a hint of what some of the things that can be a component that gets in the way of healthy sleep. You know, there can be environmental factors that interrupt our ability to sleep and maintain a healthy sleep regimen. It could be overextending ourselves, where you're just working nonstop and not allowing times for rest. So, and that can lead to anxiety. And then the last one, of course, is also about anxiety. And there can be a part of sleep where the anxiety about not falling asleep kind of fuels the disruptions to sleep. So let's take a look at kind of the role and purpose of sleep and just a little bit of data about sleep. So currently there's approximately 50 to 7 million American adults, or 30% of the population, that experiences occasional sleeplessness. Sleep can be understood as an essential function that allows your body and mind to recharge. Ideally, it leaves you feeling alert and refreshed when you wake up in the morning. It helps us to maintain a healthy body, and it also supports healthy brain functioning. So one of the questions you might ask is, how much do we need and how much is recommended? Well, how much we need can be individual, but I do want to share a little bit about what's recommended based on studies. So there's across different categories and across the lifespan, newborns need the most amount of sleep. They actually require 14 to 17 hours of sleep out of a 24-hour day. And then you see it progresses through school age, teen, young adult. It's interesting because it says here for teens, 8 to 10 hours is needed. Some reports actually have more for teens. My husband is actually a high school science teacher in Northeast Philly, and the school district of Philadelphia just made the decision for the upcoming school year that high schools begin at 9:00 a.m. And it was the primary reason was looking at sleep and how high school students need more sleep, and therefore starting school later allows for that to happen. Young adults and adults, need 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and older adults about 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So I wanted to look a little bit at general perceptions and expectations of sleep, and then actual sleep cycles. So we've heard sayings like, "Oh, I slept like a baby last night," or "I slept like a log." And often that's taken to mean that, you slept uninterrupted, you didn't wake up, and it was just kind of sleep, complete slumber the whole night. And having that expectation or that perspective on sleep can lead one to mistakenly believe that you're experiencing problem sleep or that your sleep cycle is off. Now, I'm not talking about waking up and not being able to fall back asleep. I'm just talking about waking up, maybe going to the restroom and then being able to go back to sleep, or waking up and going back to sleep. So typically in an average night's sleep, if you're getting 7 to 8 hours, you're having a sleep cycle that lasts for 90 to 120 minutes. And so the healthy adult cycles through approximately 5 to 7 sleep cycles in one night, which means you could be waking up as many as 5 to 7 times. The key, though, is that you're falling back to sleep within a few minutes, not taking 20 minutes or 30 minutes to fall back to sleep. So just something to keep in mind, that it is normal to wake up during your experience of sleep. So some of the barriers to sleep and common causes of insomnia are stress. And that's very prevalent in this age that we live in right now, with a lot of uncertainty and just kind of what we're kind of coming out of COVID, and then, war that we're experiencing in Ukraine, and just multiple variables that contribute to stress. Age factors into sleep. Older adults actually do tend to need less sleep. But older adults can also have more shallow sleep. So looking at that, and also there's sometimes more of a prevalence of situations of chronic pain with older adults. So that could also be contributing to sleep disruption. Our lifestyle practices, so irregular sleep schedules. You have people who may work overnight several days in a week, or 3-4 days they're working overnights and then 3 days off, and that can really throw off one's sleep schedule. Overuse of electronic devices just before bed or close to bedtime, as well as consumption of caffeine, alcohol, sugary foods. Nicotine is also another substance that can interrupt and disrupt sleep. Eating heavy meals or spicy foods before bed is not recommended. That can disrupt your sleep. And there's certain medical conditions and medications. So specific sleep disorders include narcolepsy, where there's just excessive sleepiness during the day, to the point where you actually can fall asleep behind the wheel when you're driving, or fall asleep at work. There's restless leg syndrome and sleep apnea. So these are conditions that you would want to definitely consult with a doctor for treatment to experience relief of that. And then, of course, mental health conditions like anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. And it can be a little bit tricky, because with conditions like anxiety, you don't know if it's the chicken or the egg. And sometimes it's both, that you experience anxiety and that disrupts your sleep. And then the disrupted sleep increases your anxiety. So something to keep in mind with causes of disrupted sleep and insomnia. I wanted to look at the impact of sleep deprivation, and I'm going to play a brief, less than 5-minute video for us to just get a sense of that.
In 1965, 17-year-old high school student Randy Garner stayed awake for 264 hours. that's 11 days, to see how he'd cope without sleep. On the second day, his eyes stopped focusing. Next, he lost the ability to identify objects by touch. By day 3, Garner was moody and uncoordinated. At the end of the experiment, he was struggling to concentrate, had trouble with short-term memory, became paranoid, and started hallucinating. Although Garner recovered without long-term psychological or physical damage, for others, losing shut-eye can result in hormonal imbalance, illness, and in extreme cases, death. We're only beginning to understand why we sleep to begin with, but we do know it's essential. Adults need 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, and adolescents need about 10. We grow sleepy due to signals from our body telling our brain we are tired, and signals from the environment telling us it's dark outside. The rise in sleep-inducing chemicals like adenosine and melatonin send us into a light doze that grows deeper, making our breathing and heart rate slow down and our muscles relax. This non-REM sleep is when DNA is repaired and our bodies replenish themselves for the day ahead. In the United States, it's estimated that 30% of adults and 66% of adolescents are regularly sleep deprived. This isn't just a minor inconvenience. Staying awake can cause serious bodily harm. When we lose sleep, learning, memory, mood, and reaction time are affected. Sleeplessness may also cause inflammation, hallucinations, high blood pressure, and it's even been linked to diabetes and obesity. In 2014, a devoted soccer fan died after staying awake for 48 hours to watch the World Cup. While his untimely death was due to a stroke, studies show that chronically sleeping fewer than 6 hours a night increases stroke risk by 4.5 times compared to those getting a consistent 7 to 8 hours of shut-eye. For a handful of people on the planet who carry a rare inherited genetic mutation, sleeplessness is a daily reality. This condition, known as fatal familial insomnia, places the body in a nightmarish state of wakefulness, forbidding it from entering the sanctuary of sleep. Within months or years, this progressively worsening condition leads to dementia and death. How can sleep deprivation cause such immense suffering? Scientists think the answer lies with the accumulation of waste products in the brain. During our waking hours, our cells are busy using up our day's energy sources, which get broken down into various byproducts, including adenosine. As adenosine builds up, it increases the urge to sleep, also known as sleep pressure. In fact, caffeine works by blocking adenosine's receptor pathways. Other waste products also build up in the brain, and if they're not cleared away, they collectively overload the brain and are thought to lead to the many negative symptoms of sleep deprivation. So what's happening in our brain when we sleep to prevent this? Scientists found something called the glymphatic system, a cleanup mechanism that removes this buildup and is much more active when we're asleep. It works by using cerebrospinal fluid to flush away toxic byproducts that accumulate between cells. Lymphatic vessels, which serve as pathways for immune cells, have recently been discovered in the brain, and they may also play a role in clearing out the brain's daily waste products. While scientists continue exploring the restorative mechanisms behind sleep, we can be sure that slipping into slumber is a necessity if we want to maintain our health and our sanity.
So there's a lot of information there, right? There's a lot about what happens when we don't get enough sleep and what happens if it's prolonged over time. You know, I mentioned in the write-up that sleep is not a renewable resource. So just making up for it, trying to make up for it, actually can fuel prolonged sleep issues. So I wanted to look at some benefits of healthy sleep practices. One of the things that's important to notice about sleep practices is that when you have healthy sleep practices in place, you tend to get sick less often. You have fewer colds, flus, infections. You're able to maintain a healthy weight and weight loss. It's because you burn more calories. You actually can burn as many calories while you're asleep as you do when you're awake. So having an adequate night's sleep actually helps to reset your body and helps you to burn needed calorie as the video talked about, remove some of those wastes that are on the brain that disrupt sleep. You have a lower risk for more serious health problems like diabetes and heart disease. You're also able to kind of reduce stress and have a buffer to stress and improve your overall mood when you practice good sleep patterns. Better brain functioning, whether at school, at work, at home, in church, community settings. There's just kind of a umbrella effect when you have and maintain healthy sleep patterns. You also tend to get along better with others. There's fewer accidents on the road because many driving accidents happen and occur with those who are experiencing sleep disruptions or because of drowsiness behind the wheel. So I wanted to talk about some steps that can be helpful in maintaining a healthy sleep regimen. And one of the first things is really setting a schedule. We talked about the fact that sleep is not a renewable resource. So it's important to kind of set up a realistic sleep schedule for yourself and to maintain that every day throughout the week. So, even on days off, not sleeping in for more than an hour so that you're staying within that kind of a consistent window, which impacts kind of circadian rhythms, which has to do with your internal body clock, right? That's impacted by light and evening. So using a sleep diary to track sleep can help identify what may be interfering with your sleep. And how long do you maintain it? Long enough to identify patterns and to gain perspective and understanding. So on the next slide, I have kind of a larger visual of this sleep diary. This is an example of one that you could use, where for an entire week, you indicate what time you went to bed, what time you woke up, how many hours you slept, how long roughly it took you to fall asleep, what your overall quality of sleep was, what you felt it was when you wake up in the morning, and how you feel when you wake up. Are you feeling refreshed, tired, groggy, or alert? Was your sleep disrupted by temperature or noise, dreams, or like kind of repetitive thoughts, not feeling tired or discomfort? And then just also capturing like how many times you woke up during the night. And likewise, you would also do one at night where you're capturing kind of whether or not you took a nap during each day, how much caffeine you had and the time of day that you had that caffeine, how many minutes you exercised. It's really important to not do strenuous exercise for within a 2-hour window of when you go to sleep. Medications or drugs, there's certain medications that can impact sleep. Like allergy medicines, like daytime allergy medicines, which I know I struggle with allergies. And throughout the day, how drowsy did you feel? And how often, right? So was it never, sometimes, or very often? And then how would you describe your mood throughout the day? Lastly, looking at in that hour before bed, we're really looking at that 2 hours, you want to start that process of winding down. Like what kind of activities did you engage in? Were you reading? Were you on screens? Showering, phone, eating, spending time with your partner, your spouse, just kind of identifying and laying that all out for each day. Then typically, some can do this within 1 week and get a really good sense. Sometimes it's helpful to do 2 or 3 weeks of a sleep diary. And the link to obtain that is noted here. So additional steps towards establishing and maintaining a healthy sleep regimen, it's really important to not engage in sleep power struggles. And by that, I mean, not trying to force yourself to go to sleep. right? Because when you're forcing yourself to go to sleep, you're attempting, because it's really an oxymoron, you end up exerting mental and emotional energy, effort, and focus, and that actually keeps you up. So it's important instead to divert your attention and engage in non-stimulating activity to help take your mind off sleep, whatever that might be for you. For some people, reading a book puts them to sleep. Drawing can help. Writing in a journal can be tremendously helpful. I remember the saying that, what the mind cannot contain, it throws off onto the body. So writing, it has a way of kind of imprinting things in a certain way and releasing it. So it's not circling around in your brain like birds flying, over a nest. It just kind of parks it and frees up some space for you to rest. Engaging in counseling can help because you may not be aware of what's getting in the way of sleep. And that process of counseling can help bring what is unconscious into your conscious awareness. And that's a significant focus in your counseling work and experience. So, we talked about earlier about caffeine and alcohol and nicotine, that they impact your overall sleep regimen and experience. And noting that caffeine can stay in your body for up to 12 hours. There's people who say caffeine doesn't affect you. If that's you, great. But for some people, it really does affect, and most people, it does affect your sleep. So you may want to look at caffeine intake, because even decaffeinated coffee has some caffeine in it. And if you're having other things like energy drinks, all of that accumulates, right? That needs to be discharged in order for you to be able to rest easy. Avoid napping, especially later in the day. And it's helpful to maintain like an overall healthy eating and exercise regimen. And again, not exercising within that 2 hours before going to bed. And here's something that's really important. You need to use your bed for sleeping, right? Not for work, not for checking emails or, any other activity that's not designed for bed, right? So because you want to create new muscle memory that links your bed to sleep, right? So when you think of AIGs, or associations, interpretations, and generalizations, you want to develop muscle memory that when you just the process of laying down to go to sleep kind of signals to your physiology, oh, it's time to go to bed. And that creating that, there's an expectation of lying down equals going to sleep. Right. And you want to make your sleep environment as comfortable as possible. I know in my house, what happens sometimes, it's cold at night. You turn up the heat a little bit, but then you wake up in the middle of the night and it's really warm. It's recommended that you set your temperature at a cooler temperature to help aid sleep. So, 67, nothing cool enough that you can go to sleep and stay asleep versus waking up feeling really warm. You want it to be quiet or low frequency background noise. We often hear about, white noise, or there's newer research talks about white noise versus pink noise versus brown noise. Brown noise, which is not, even though it's you think color, it's actually more about the person who developed this as a mechanism to aid sleep. His name was Robert Brown, and he was a botanist in the 1800s. That brown noise is at a lower frequency and helps to aid sleep. And I have a small snippet of that you can hear what it sounds like. It almost sounds like rushing waters, or what you might imagine Niagara Falls sounds like at night. Keeping it dark is also helpful, and using eye mask is very helpful for sleep. So I'm just going to play a brief snippet of what brown noise sounds like. So if having background noise could be helpful for you, you can kind of go on YouTube and utilize that to help as you set and create an atmosphere for sleep. Another thing is that have a time when you start that process, right? Where you start to dim the lights at home and you start to kind of prepare for transitioning to sleep, so that your whole body and your mind and emotions are getting ready and acclimated for that transition to sleep versus going from high activity to all of a sudden trying to go to sleep. So one of the key things is figuring out where is your balance. And that does look different for different people. I thought it might be helpful to look at Samaritan Family Wellness, which has assessments for the whole family, really looking at that question of balance, right? Because that can make all the difference. So Samaritan Wellness has been around for quite a while, and I'm showing you the adult wellness self-assessment. And what it looks at is kind of 4 key areas: the area of your heart or your relationships and your emotions. So kind of looking at how your internal experience of emotions impacts your external experience of relationships and how your external experience of relationships impacts your emotions. The area of the soul, looking at how your spiritual practices impacts your experience of rest and play. And how your experience of rest and play impacts your spirituality, that there's connection between those. And in the area of strength, the importance of looking at how caring for your body actually aids your resilience level, your ability to bounce back from stressful situations. And lastly, just how your internal experience of organization impacts your external experience of vocation, work, school, what have you. So just looking at just one of them, the care for the body, it looks at whether or not you're incorporating regular physical activity and exercise into your routine, how you're treating your body, daily decisions that you make about what you eat and drink. Are you maintaining healthy checkups with your doctor and the dentist? How comfortable are you with your relationship with food, right? And your decisions about tobacco and alcohol or other drugs. How healthy is your current weight? And what's your sense of self-worth regarding the health of your body? And last but not least, how much sleep are you getting? Are you getting at least an average of 8 hours of sleep? And the goal as you go through all of these different dimensions is not to focus on what you're doing wrong, but at the end to look at, wow, these are some areas that I have been giving less attention to and that I might need to pay more attention to, and look at what practices might help change where I am in terms of, how well you're caring for your body, even how hydrated are you staying. And what's nice is that you can actually go to the site and complete the assessment electronically. And 3 months later, after you've kind of put into place a self-care plan, you can go back and revisit it and take the assessment again to see how it compares to your baseline when you initially took that assessment. Another resource is, in brief, your guide to healthy sleep. And one of the things that it addresses there is when you are experiencing sleep to a problem level where you need to actually get medical treatment for it. If you are consistently taking more than 30 minutes each night to fall asleep, and again, this is an aggregate, not just taking one of these characteristics, or you're consistently waking up multiple times at night and having trouble falling back to sleep. It's not the waking up, it's the having trouble falling back asleep or waking up too early in the morning. If you're feeling really sleepy throughout the day and find yourself needing to take frequent naps, or you fall asleep at inappropriate times during the day, or if your loved ones are saying that when you sleep, you're snoring loudly, or you're snorting and gasping or making choking sounds, or that you stop breathing for short periods. You notice, and this is kind of in the restless legs area, but just kind of creeping, tingly, or crawling feelings in your legs and arms that are only relieved by moving or massaging them, especially in the evening or when you're trying to fall asleep. Jerkiness, kind of involuntary jerkiness of limbs is another sign, or having vivid dreamlike experiences while you're falling asleep or dozing. Some people talk about feeling like their mind is awake, but their body is asleep, which can feel scary for many. Having episodes where you experience sudden muscle weakness, or where you're angry or fearful when you laugh, and you feel as though you cannot move when you first wake up. We talked a little bit about that. So those are some things to be aware of, and just to go see a doctor to get further assessment sooner rather than later. This is another kind of just a nice, helpful resource on causes of insomnia that goes a little bit more detailed. I'm not going to play that today, as well as kind of really seeking out your medical professionals to see what might be helpful for you, because each person is unique, and it really takes a holistic approach to ascertain what might be at the root of your particular sleep challenges and finding solutions to turn that around. This is just another brief resource on healthy tips for a better night's sleep. So you can access that and read that on your own. But just wanted to say thank you for your time. And I'm going to turn it back over to Gwen.
Thank you so much, Kim. That was very good. We have some questions that have come in through the Q&A chat. So we're going to start with those questions. And also we have questions that you all have submitted on your registration as well. And so we will ask some of those questions. So Kim, the first question here in the chat, what are your thoughts on taking melatonin supplements?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I've gotten really a mixed bag when it comes to melatonin. Often when individuals take melatonin, it helps them fall asleep. It helps you fall asleep, but it doesn't necessarily help you stay asleep. And also some individuals have actually had more vibrant dream states, which kind of keeps them awake. So for some people, it has been helpful, but one of the concerns or one of the outcomes with melatonin is that often it helps you fall asleep, but it doesn't necessarily help you stay asleep. Some of the things to think about, though, are looking at certain types of herbal teas that can really be helpful, like valerian tea or chamomile tea. Those can be really helpful in kind of creating an atmosphere and are conducive to sleep.
Yes, yes. And I love those herbal teas.
Yes, so do I.
Absolutely. Another question here, is there a link to the wellness survey that you could provide?
Yes, that is actually on that resource page. So
okay.
I'll go back to that. It is, so under Samaritan Family Wellness Assessments, there's you can click on that link and you can take the electronic, and you can also download a PDF of the paper copy of the assessment.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Kim.
Sure.
How can I get everything done before bedtime?
Oh, that's a good.
Yes.
So that's what we all want.
Yes.
Well, that's kind of a loaded question because, right, that question of balance. And when you talk about getting it all done, right, there's that saying that if your outgo exceeds your income, then your upkeep will be your downfall. And so maybe it's moving away from trying to do it all and saying, what are the 2 or 3 things that I need to accomplish today that will make this that is important. And I can say, okay, that's done. Because one thing we know, there's no end to work. So being able to pace yourself and set realistic goals versus trying to do it all can really help with sleep.
Thank
Yeah.
you. That sounds very good. Another question in the chat, Janika Menedeza asked, what words of advice would you give to people who work overnight shifts? I heard someone say that the best sleep schedule is one that is consistent with the natural day and night pattern.
Yeah, and that is very true, because that's our body and again, those circadian rhythms. We are affected by dark and light. And so if you're working at night, it can make it challenging, but there are specific interventions that can help when you have a sleep cycle or schedule that is kind of different, right? Or if it's not kind of the regular daytime awake, nighttime asleep. There is a link that I could share. I don't have that now, that has more information about specific ways to cultivate healthy sleep when it's not really possible to have the same schedule every day, right? It's like, so often for nurses, they might work 3 days from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. or 4 days. And then they have a different schedule on those other days. It's many of the interventions that are helpful in that case are similar to for those who experience jet lag, like kind of. So, but that is a very important question, because it does require some additional attention and effort to maintain healthy sleep when you have an irregular sleep schedule.
Right. Thank you for that, Kim. And you had mentioned a link that you could provide. We're going to be sending everybody a replay of this. So if there's any information that you want everyone to receive, we can put it in that email that we'll send to everyone as well. The next question, could I have 8 hours in total doing 24 hours, but 2 or 3 hours each time?
It really is important. So it sounds like you're talking about napping throughout the day for 2 to 3 hours versus having a contiguous, consecutive. And it is important to have that consecutive time of sleep. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we are waking up, at intervals of like every 90 minutes to 120 minutes. But the goal is not to stay up, it's to, within a few minutes to go right back to sleep. So I know sometimes there's work situations where that's kind of part and parcel, but it is, if you can configure your schedule so that you can have a solid 8 hours time for sleeping, that is most beneficial health-wise.
Okay. Very good. Margaret Rainier asked, could you please repeat the quote, if your output exceeds your...
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's that was a pastor that would say that from over 40 years ago. If your outgo exceeds your income, then your upkeep will be your downfall. So really looking at, and then the wise words of my mom, she would often say, you cannot pack a trunk into a suitcase. So what are you trying to pack into your day? And what do you need to set aside and say, oh my gosh, that is too much to carry. And I need to say, trust, Jesus said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So how am I casting my care on him and asking him to lead me in wisdom and guidance on what to take on and what not to take on? Because that balance is really key.
Yes. Very good quotes. You showed us the video impact of sleep deprivation. I have a question here that says, how do you define sleep deprivation? Is rhythm more important?
Rhythm is part of what is important, like that you're not pushing past that. Sometimes you get that initial sleep urge, right, to go to sleep, and then you push past it, and then you end up pushing past your like circadian rhythm, your internal clock, and then it becomes harder to fall asleep, right? So sleep deprivation really looks like on a regular basis, you're not getting an adequate amount of sleep, right? That you're having irregular sleep times. Like one night you're going to bed at 2:00 in the morning, another night it's, 11. It's kind of all over the map, and that there's a cumulative effect to that leads one to experience the impact of sleep deprivation.
Yes.
So consistency is really important.
Another question here, how do you specifically make time to sleep? What do you sacrifice?
It's kind of that quote again, right?
Yes.
about how much you're actually taking on and what's actually realistic. And how do you set yourself up for success in that, and build into your schedule, okay, I know that in this amount of time, this is going to be required. So how do you break that up into smaller components and build that into your schedule versus, like doing an all-nighter, right? That was back in college, doing an all-nighter, and then it takes time to recover from that. So it for me, it really looks like giving myself permission to say yes to this and no to that, right? There's a reason God says let your yes be yes and let your no be no. Because we can take on more than what he intended and what is actually healthy and helpful and conducive to healthy sleep.
Okay. Janika asked another question here. Can we glorify God with our sleep?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many like references in scripture to God like giving sweet sleep as a gift to his children, right? That, that we can lie down and not be afraid because he provides the security and safety that we need. So we do want to honor God. That is part of our temple. Our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. And so part of how we honor that temple is allowing for rest. And God talks about the importance of rest, that there is a rest that remains for the people of God. And how do we incorporate that Sabbath rest, not only on Sundays, but in our daily practices and experiences? So yes, absolutely, rest and sleep is a part of our worship of God. Yeah, thanks for that question.
Yes, so good. Now, on the flip side, is there a such thing as too much sleep?
Yes, there is. Yes, depending on, like, again, looking at your life stage, right? So 17 hours of sleep for an infant is completely appropriate. But often there are times when a person is going through like severe depression or clinical depression where they can, you have an adult that can be sleeping upwards, sometimes 15 or 16 hours in a day. And that can be very concerning. Or if you've gone, days and days without sleep, and then there's all of a sudden, this huge sleep fest, and you feel like, okay, I've made up for the hours that I've missed, but really you're just kind of fueling a negative cycle because it takes you now longer to fall asleep. And it's a repetitive pattern. So there can be situations where you are having too much sleep and might want to check that out with a doctor.
Right, right. Thank you for that. And then I have a question. What can you do when you
Mhm.
toss for hours without falling asleep? Do you have any
Yeah.
tips or anything like that?
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
So it is really important. And I talked a little bit about that, the muscle memory and associations with sleep is that not to stay in bed and try and force yourself to go to sleep and just keep tossing and turning because that becomes, you're in a power struggle now with sleep. And usually staying awake wins in that case. So it's important to divert and like disrupt that pattern and do something different. Whether you pick up your Bible and read, um, you draw, you journal, you get out of bed and do something different. And like you start reading for a little while and then it's like, wow, I'm so sleepy. And then you go right to sleep. Don't allow what you're reading to become so interesting that now you stay up and push past, your sleep cycle. But it is very important to,
Mm.
yeah.
Yes, yes. And I have one last question here. Any thoughts on how to limit dreaming?
How to limit dreaming?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. I think I think one thing that can really be helpful with dreaming is because some people can like kind of direct that a little bit is having paper or a notebook by your bed to kind of write down the dream when you wake up. And that actually can help with kind of containing it and not having it be just kind of rampant dreaming throughout the night. Now, there are certain medications that can increase dream state. So that would be something to, sometimes certain thyroid medicines can have that impact. So if you've started a new medicine and you've noticed that you're having increased dream activity, you might want to bring that to your doctor's attention to see if there needs to be a revisiting of the dosage that you're taking.
Very good, Kim. Thank you so much. And we are just about out of time for today.
Okay.
Before we leave, we want to thank you, Kim, for a very helpful and very informative presentation on a much needed topic. And we thank you so much for your time today. It was very, very good. We'll be sending everyone a link of today's webinar in a follow-up email. And we encourage you to share this information with anyone you think that the content would be very helpful to. I also want to put a plug in for our Masters of Science in Counseling program. Kim is an excellent example of the caliber faculty our counseling students study under. If you would like to learn more about our MS in Counseling program or any of our graduate programs, you can visit our website or to learn more or email admissions@cairn.edu to speak with one of our admissions counselors. We're also currently enrolling for our graduate programs for the summer semester, which starts May 16th, and our fall semester that starts August the 29th. If you're considering furthering your education even if you're interested in auditing a class, you can inquire today or you can email us and we will be more than happy to get back in contact with you. We are so grateful that you were able to be a part of our webinar today. And we hope that this time was very beneficial to you. And we look forward for you to join us the next time. Thanks again and have a great rest of your day.